The father of 3 U.S. Marine sons is at the center of a disturbing viral video that shows immigration agents punching and arresting him.
Give me your hand.
I've never heard of my dad like that. Never heard him in pain.
Multiple videos shared on social media show a Tustin man being punched by Border Patrol agents as they try to detain him in the middle of a busy intersection in Santa Ana.
I felt a lot of anger. I was really mad, and then I was really sad as well. I just wish I could have been there to help him.
Alejandro says his father was working a landscaping job at IHOP when he was approached by agents.
From what I'm thinking is he saw these individuals come up with masks, civilian clothes with guns out. Pretty sure he got scared.
Alejandro, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and his younger brothers, both active duty Marines, called the arrest of their father frustrating and inhumane.
Both my parents always taught us to respect everyone, respect this country, thank this country, and then that led us to join the Marine Corps and kind of give back to the country and be thankful. And then I don't think it's right.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. I'm going to point something out that is probably obvious to most of the vets who watch this show, but may have escaped many others. The only son speaking out about this brutal assault, and that's what it was, an assault by masked government agents on a nonviolent, hardworking immigrant. Only the former Marine son is talking to the press. The other two, still on active duty, have stayed quiet. I bring that up because it speaks to the enormous professionalism of these young men. Their father was beaten by agents of the same government that they serve. But as active duty Marines, they are honoring their oaths and their chains of command, and they are not commenting. I'm pretty sure if I were in their shoes, I would not have that kind of discipline. What happened to their dad is unconscionable. And while I admire the sincerity of their patriotism in the face of this assault, I have to confess my patriotism is tested at times like this. But I always come back to the idea that the truest way to love your country is not to celebrate some myth about past greatness, but to demand that America live up to its promises and to hold it accountable. We are about to face monumental tests of patriotism because what is happening in LA is going to spread. The Trump regime's assault on civilians there is merely the opening salvo in a larger campaign to extend his reach into communities across the country, with the ultimate goal, this is critical, of staying in power by whatever means necessary. And he is going to use the military to do it. I spoke with Kris Goldsmith about this. As usual, he does not disappoint. Here's our conversation. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. We've got Kris Goldsmith back with us. He is the head of Veterans Fighting Fascism. Speaks for itself. Never more relevant than today. Kris also helped produce the phenomenally successful Unite for Veterans event in D.C., but it's amazing how quickly the news cycle shifts, isn't it, Kris? Because I don't know, it felt like a few hours later, the Trump regime is cracking heads in L.A., and you've got a really insightful news Substack posts that says this is a test case. This is a trial run for something bigger. What do you think?
Yeah. That is exactly what people should be looking to Los Angeles and seeing. What hasn't gotten enough attention, I think, regarding the memorandum that Trump published last week is that it didn't say the words California or Gavin Newsom or Los Angeles. He federalized the National Guard, period, full stop, not the California National Guard. He federalized the National Guard. And he authorized deployments ahead of ICE actions, anticipating that there would be protests. And he defines in this memorandum, which is not very long, it's like a page long, he defines protests as a form of insurrection against the United States. And it is because of that form of insurrection, these protests, First Amendment protected protests, that he is planning to deploy troops throughout the country. And this is really the what you and I have been talking about for 4 years now is what we perceived as one of the worst case scenarios of the normalization of troops being used as police forces. We are one major step toward that happening nationwide.
Do you think this is being done with an eye towards 2026 and the elections. What is he laying the groundwork for? Like, what is this in anticipation of?
Well, Donald Trump has been talking about what he defines as illegal votes, or people who are not citizens voting in the presidential election. His base and conservatives more broadly truly do believe that there are folks who are undocumented who are voting in federal elections for which there is no evidence, but there is lots of propaganda about it. So the normalization of troops on the ground for this immigration issue that we're facing today, or the mass deportations and kidnappings, to I guess use more accurate terminology, it's not a big leap to imagine them being used for elections, because in the minds of Trump and a broad spectrum on the political right, immigration and voting are the same issue. They believe that the people who are being deported have been illegally voting, even though there is, I shouldn't just say there's no evidence for it. It is false. It is a lie. It is untrue. It is propaganda. And it is meant to incite racist violence and to justify racist violence by the state and civilians and vigilantes against people of color.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Huge shout out to everyone who has supported this show via our Patreon page. If you want to weigh in with questions for upcoming guests, or give us feedback on past guests, or make sure you never miss an episode, click the link below. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks a month, just know that we put every dollar back into the show. We do have another reporting trip to Ukraine coming up. Thanks for the help. One of the challenges we have when it comes to the federalization of the National Guard is that so many of the levers of power that the Trump regime is exercising are legal. I mean, many of the things they're doing are patently illegal, like the disappearing and the renditions and those kinds of things. But the president can federalize the National Guard. The president doesn't need a governor's sign off. I mean, it's extremely rare. You have to go back to Johnson to find the last instance of this. But how can citizens push back against something like this, knowing that it's wrong, knowing that it's provocative and inflammatory, when it's not yet crossed the line into illegality?
Yeah. So one critical point of the memorandum that Trump published last week is that he is not defining. He's not invoking the Insurrection Act. If he were to invoke the Insurrection Act, Congress would have certain powers to rein him back in, because he's using these synonyms and not specifically allowing troops to enforce federal law, but instead to protect federal buildings and federal agents. He is staying in his lane. He is not crossing into illegality. But I don't think that it's necessary for him to invoke the Insurrection Act or to cross the line and to, start acting as if he invoked the Insurrection Act. What I believe is likely to happen is that Stephen Miller will likely try to make it so that federal troops are put into harm's way, so that their physical presence, whether it's the weapons, the uniforms, the shields, the armored vehicles, when they get put into a compromised position where they're undermanned and they are in a hotspot and not backed up or not backing up local forces or federal forces, there will come a time when protesters are provoked into attacking troops, and troops will then be able to defend themselves. As I imagine the rules of engagement are going to be something that they pay attention to and loosen up beyond anything that we've seen previously. And the videos alone, even if the troops don't defend themselves, if bricks or things like Molotov cocktails are getting thrown at active duty troops or reservists in uniform, the propaganda value of those photos and videos are going to give Trump the political capital that he needs to push the envelope further. This is a tactic of authoritarians. It has been used throughout history, where they create a propaganda opportunity by basically putting their own troops at risk, knowing that it is going to provoke a violent response because the community feels threatened. And after that community responds, he is going to get to escalate, like all of the authoritarians have before him.
Which makes the deployment of U.S. Marines all the more ominous. I mean, This is an escalation. I don't think most people realize the difference between a National Guard unit. These guys are bankers and bakers in their spare time, versus active duty U.S. Marines who train to storm beaches and kill America's enemies. And they are now being told that America's enemies are Americans.
Yeah. And let's kind of level set a little bit, because I think that most people watching this show are not veterans, have not spent time in the military, and don't really understand not just the cultural differences between all of these different types of units, but what it actually looks like to experience that kind of service. So Army reservists, or California National Guard in this case, these are people who have full-time jobs. They are literally citizen soldiers. This is an all-volunteer force. People who join the National Guard in California, most of their time in service is doing things like responding to emergencies. In the case of California, think wildfires, think landslides after rainstorms, right? That is what the National Guard does. And these people are generally joining not just to serve their community, but for the same benefits that everybody else in the working class, needs to survive. Educational benefits, medical benefits, that type of thing, right? These are not people who are necessarily joining the military to end the lives of the enemy, like I did when I joined after 9/11 as a forward observer. I joined the Army to blow up the enemy. That was my job as a forward observer. The National Guardsmen in California, these people did not join the military, the National Guard, to do that kind of thing. Something like 30% or more of California National Guardsmen are immigrants or from immigrant families. They are from this community. Now, that is very different from the Marines, the active duty Marines who are at Camp Pendleton. Now, every unit and every MOS, military occupational specialty, is different. Not everybody joined, the Army to blow things up like I did. Some people are in intel or logistics or civil affairs, right? I don't know the specifics on the Marine Corps unit, but as an active duty unit, these are people who live in the uniform. They are a Marine when they wake up in the morning, they are a Marine when they go to bed at night, and everything in between, they are a Marine. That is their identity. That is what all of their training and their job experience is all about. That is just a very culturally different experience than being mobilized from the community to serve the community that you're in. Right? These Marines from Pendleton don't necessarily have familial or cultural ties the way that the National Guardsmen do. So that distance is, to me, a little bit worrying. But I do want to remind people that, again, this is an all-volunteer force. These are Americans, and American troops did not join the military to wield their weapons against Americans. So the mindset that would need to be instilled in a Marine or otherwise other service member is fundamentally different from, say, cops. People who join the LAPD grew up watching riots. They know what the LAPD's relationship with civilians is, and they're joining that for a reason. When people join the Marine Corps, they don't think they're joining the LAPD. They're not coming in with the mindset of, okay, I'm going to face off with protesters someday. So they are going to experience, I think, a moral conundrum that they're going to have to face that is unique. They have never faced this before, and no one that they've served under has faced something like this before.
Well, and undoubtedly in 10 years, we'll be talking about moral injury at a whole new scale because of what this regime is asking the military to do. Kris, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much. Let's talk again soon.
Thank you, Ken.